We got more tea time, our first segment of the day. A little bit of drama involving the likes of Greg Berhalter and Giovanni Reyna. This was something that came out recently that during the 2022 World Cup in Qatar, that Giovanni Reyna was upset at Greg Berhalter for his lack of playing time. Greg told him early on at camp that, hey, you're probably going to have a smaller role than what you might expect. And Gio didn't take that very well. And you know what, Steven? Someone else didn't take that very well, his parents. Now let's dive into that. I'll give you a bit of a platform to tell us all the tea that the people need to know about this drama.
Yes, absolutely. Let's get right into it. Cole, great recap of the previous drama that we thought was big, but let's get into what we're talking about right now, which is Giovanni Reyna's parents playing mommy and daddy ball, U.S. soccer version. So basically, I like to break this down into 4 segments for you to make a long story short. We have the chain of events that has happened, right? So, first things first. We have the allegations of Greg Berhalter being blackmailed at the World Cup by an outside source. I don't know how much clickbait thumbnail you can get other than that. That's sequence number 1. Second thing that happens in that is Greg Berhalter creates a Twitter account that he has not previously had, an unverified Twitter account, and releases a 2-page statement via him and his wife Rosalind explaining an incident 30 years ago that had to do with a case of domestic violence when he was 18 years old and they were just dating. Basically around this blackmail, we put 2 and 2 together. He kind of gets ahead of this story that we still don't know what's going on, and talks about how an outside... He doesn't use the term blackmail, though. I think that's very interesting and important to note. He doesn't use blackmail in this statement, but he talks about that somebody had something that would, quote, take him down. So pressure on his family, himself, and the position of being the manager of the U.S. men's national team. So that's number 2. So he releases a statement to kind of get ahead of this curve. Third thing in this sequence is U.S. Soccer comes out and talks about investigating this kind of broad thing of an investigation going on between people in and outside of the organization to do with all of these allegations. And then, last but not least, this is where the Reynas come in. It's kind of, all about that Giovanni Reyna stuff. This is where mom and dad get involved. It's no secret they were not happy about the lack of their son's playing time at the World Cup whatsoever. Claudio talking to old teammates like Brian McBride, who is the general manager of U.S. Soccer, and we find out via Danielle, Claudio's wife, also former U.S. women's national team player, that she contacted her friend that also just so happened to be the president of U.S. Soccer. High friends and high places, right? Ernie Stewart talking about this incident that had happened with Greg Berhalter and his now wife, as Greg Berhalter's wife Rosalind was teammates with Danielle back in college at the University of North Carolina. And all these allegations of blackmail she clears up. I never tried to get Greg fired, blackmail, like she kind of denied that stuff. Also saying this was just me. This was all me. My husband did not speak to anybody. Claudio Reyna, I believe is a chairman or president, is in some sort of leadership role at Austin FC in the MLS. So that's honestly as short as I can make it. There's a lot to unpack there. So I guess Cole, Brandon, initial reactions to the news, expound a little bit more. All of this coming in waves over the past, honestly, 48 hours. How are we feeling?
It's insane. It honestly is insane, and why can't we have anything be normal? First of all, this is not how people act. This is not how you react to your son not getting to play at the World Cup. Put into consideration a lot of things. He's a young kid. Maybe he didn't show up how Greg wanted him to show, whatever. Like, that's the manager's decision. That's just how it is. You don't bring up something personal from 30 plus years ago involving 2 teenage kids who are now happily married over 25 years. Like, that's just insane for someone to go back and blackmail someone. I'm going to use the word blackmail. Use that information to try and bring them down in the public eye, which is just so undeserving of anybody, and let alone the head coach of the U.S. men's national team. That's pretty insane. Doesn't matter who you are. But yeah, it's just, I cannot believe this is a real story that we are talking about. I think a lot of people have been reiterating the same thought of just, well, are we really letting daddy ball happen in the public eye? All this different stuff. It's just fascinating to me. And I feel bad for the Berhalters. I mean, imagine their kids finding out about this. Like, mom and dad had a fight that mom got hurt from dad. Just like, now they have to explain that to their kids if they didn't know about it. It's just like, I don't know. It's a horrible memory. And the fact that someone's been sitting on that and decided at this time to let it out is pretty insane to me.
And a quick thing as well, just to give some background about the statement. If you have not looked at Greg Berhalter's statement with his wife, go look at it. But basically, just to summarize it, I think it's important. They had gotten in an argument. Greg talked about that he had kicked his wife in the legs, and that they broke up for 7 months or so. They both had consulted their families about it, told their friends. Greg Berhalter said that he went to counseling. They got back together by the support of both of their families and have been happily married. And both say it's an isolated incident, all these things. So didn't just want to loosely throw out domestic violence out there. Again, Greg condemns his own actions. But again, 30 years ago, 18 years old at the time, and they since then have worked through it and talk about how great they are together as a couple, as a family, and also that Claudia Reyna and Danielle Reyna are so close by both quoting like family with Greg and Rosalind as well. Go ahead, Brandon. Just want to give that context.
It's so weird, and I'm really starting to feel bad for Greg. I do feel bad for Greg. All the stuff he's been put through, like during the World Cup, like people are mad at him making choices for the team that he thinks is best for the team. Could you imagine? I mean, I don't know. And then it comes out, and Gio Reyna's now. I don't get it. You know what? It just screams entitlement to me. Like, and it's obviously been passed down to Gio Reyna the way he acted in camp. Like, it's just getting more and more ridiculous. And we can call it blackmail because that's really what it is. You're trying to stir the pot. They are pretty active people in the soccer scene. Whether it gets out, I mean, it would eventually get out to the media. So that is definitely that's definitely blackmail. Yeah, Claudio Reyna had nothing to do with it, but he supports his wife. Yeah, no. Definitely was giving her a nudge saying, hey, why don't you go talk to what's-his-face and see what we can do about this. I know a lot of people don't like Greg, and so they're trying to get him out, but this is just way, way, way out of bounds. And everything that you guys have said, it's just sad at this point for Greg. You know, already in a weird time. Does he have the job? Does he not? I don't know. Trying to figure out all these things. And then having to deal with family stuff that's brought up now to the public. We're playing mommy-daddy ball like we're in kindergarten t-ball or like your first year of travel baseball. Like, what is going on? I don't know, but I'm just all upset about it, to be honest.
Yes, and what makes this timing that much more impeccable is Greg Berhalter currently is out of contract with the U.S. men's national team. Contract talks are in the works right now. So the timing of everything is also important to note as well. U.S. Soccer has come out and said that they are still potentially considering Greg Berhalter to be the U.S. men's national team coach. Also, I believe this came out today, Greg Berhalter saying on a talk show that he wants to stay with the program. That's kind of been up in the air. So now we have intention that Greg wants to stay, and we have U.S. Soccer saying we're still considering him. Leads me to my next question. Do we think Greg Berhalter is going to stay? We'll just start with that. Do we think Greg Berhalter will be the manager of the U.S. men's national team going forward? U.S. Soccer's already come out and brought up their interim coach that's going to be there for the January camp, an assistant of Greg that has been with the New Zealand national team as well and been on Greg's coaching staff for a while. But do we think Greg is going to be the man in this next cycle going forward?
Man, it's just like it's such a loaded question. Like there's just so much. And what's interesting is like they had some time, prior to the end of his contract on New Year's Day and the US being eliminated from the World Cup to probably have, a public backing of Greg. Like it's a decent amount of time to review someone's performance, decide, okay, we're happy with where you got this young squad. We think moving forward that you can continue to develop them in a good way. So we feel good about 2026. That would be a pretty fair amount of time for someone to say, okay, yeah, we feel good. We're going to give you the chance. However, the U.S. Soccer Federation has not done that. They have not publicly backed him in that amount of time. And now we're left with this loose-ended time of just how long might it be? We're not saying that we're in a coaching search outright. It's just sort of strange. And so for me, I would say the odds of him being back have to be slim if they just haven't brought him back at this point. I don't know, that's just how I would feel about it. But I don't know who they're going to get. If it's not Greg, then who? And that's the hard part for me to see. It's like people will say these names, and like I watched a couple people talk about the Moroccan coach, and they're just, and people also talking about they don't want someone that's been a part of the U.S. Soccer Federation. They don't want a former national team player. They don't want someone from New York or New Jersey. That's been a bit of a joke that people have always come from that. They want someone that's never been involved, someone new that's just a soccer manager that can come in and rejuvenate this squad to do great things. Well, there's not really a whole lot of names and people that are going to be able to do that unless you are really scraping the bottom of the barrel to get someone to come in, which then brings you back, okay, well then why not just stay with what you have? Yeah, evidently it's done you some good. So I don't know. It's just such a hard question to answer. I don't think that there's really any good candidate, to be honest, that's going to fit your program and is going to take you anywhere, to be honest. But Brandon, what do you have on your side of it?
Like I said in a previous podcast, I think I was fine with keeping him after the World Cup, and then he came out and said that thing that might have disrupted the locker room. Again, we don't really know. There haven't been really anything to come out like from the locker room. We just know Giovanni Reyna's upset. And people are assuming that it's messed up the locker room. If the locker room is fine with what he did talking at that leadership conference, I'm fine with keeping him as a coach. Remember, we don't have to qualify. We're already in. We have, hopefully, we'll be playing in the Copa America. Hopefully, which will be a really good challenge for everybody. And he got us to this one. I would love to see him with this group of guys fulfill like just the 8-year cycle. I don't know. And it was not even going to be a full 8 years. It would be like 7.5 or whatever it is because we took forever to hire a coach. But and now like I know this is more of the emotional side. It's like now I want him to stay because of this Giovanni Reyna stuff. And now I don't even care that he said anything in the first place, right? And I know we have to sort of keep them as two separate instances, but it's like I don't know. I think the U.S. Soccer Federation will keep Greg Berhalter as the manager. I think they're probably inquiring about other coaches, maybe like the Wolf guy from Austin. Why would he leave, though? I think that'd be a great pickup, but then he has to come in. He'll have 4 years, but I don't know. I don't know who else would fit the bill. So I think... Again, U.S. Soccer Federation has already lied privately for Greg, on behalf of Greg. They've also sort of are, in a weird way, standing up for him during this situation, saying that they're investigating his situation and also anybody that's around U.S. Soccer Federation, like, trying to pull a coup. I don't know. It's so weird. I'm just in a weird place with the whole thing. But I do think we'll keep Greg as our coach, and I am 65% okay with it. Maybe 70. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think something you touched on there that I thought about a little bit, but maybe not as much, is we've already qualified. There is no qualifying campaign. There are no dire matches. Great, you could say every match is dire or whatever, but listen, time heals all wounds. Do we think, if Greg's going to be the coach for this next 2026 World Cup, this will not be I mean, I don't think it's crazy to say this will not be even in the news at all in three years. No way, right? So he has time to build up rapport with his team, time to build up a relationship with Giovanni Reyna. Heck, I mean, maybe these you have to assume that these incidents are. Maybe you don't. I don't know. That's why there's an investigation going on. But you hope that these incidents are isolated as far as Giovanni Reyna having no idea what his parents were doing. And Reyna came out and admitted he was wrong. That's huge of him, first of all. Admitted he was wrong with his attitude prior to the World Cup. Talks about that. Talks about wanting to die for this country on the field, all the effort that he puts forth. And Greg Berhalter even recently came out and said he wished that he didn't say that about Giovanni Reyna at the leadership conference. So you have, in my opinion, some people handling this pretty mature. All the while, Greg is under pressure, knowing that people are talking about him behind his back, about this incident that happened like, to compose yourself like this, I'm kind of with Brandon. It's beforehand,
He's done it well, man. He's composed himself really well.
and I think that speaks a lot about a manager. And also, one more thing I want to touch on is how he released his statement. Creating an unverified Twitter account and tweeting out a 2-page letter. That's so weird. That's like urgent, get to the press. It was a very well crafted statement. But it almost seemed like, obviously, like when this comes out, I guess you try to beat the person to the punch or whatever it is. But it's just, there's so much there. There's so much more there. I'm really curious what this investigation finds. Maybe one more question for you guys, and maybe we move on to the second segment talking about the Premier League. But does this affect Giovanni Reyna's playing time under Greg Berhalter if he does stay? Are we thinking maybe he's out of the first few teams and friendlies 6 months? Should he be punished? I don't know. Yeah, how does this affect Reyna's playing time under Greg Berhalter if he stays, or if a new coach comes in? Is it going to be hands off for the Reyna family, or I mean, is Claudio and Danielle Reyna going to be barred from U.S. men's national team games? Like, these are things that we actually have to talk about. Like, if these two people, Claudio and Danielle, end up being found guilty or deemed blackmailing of Greg Berhalter, what's the situation with Gio? Is he going to be on the field?
Well, I will say that yes, he'll still play. I don't think there will be any issues of him playing. He's a bright young star, has a very, very high ceiling. Again, not one of our best players yet, but definitely will be, hopefully, in the future. I don't think, even if it's Greg, whoever it is, he'll be playing unless he is tied in with this whole coup thing, blackmailing, whatever you want to call it. And yeah, Claudio should lose his job probably. And yeah, no ties to U.S. soccer, to be honest. It's just not appropriate ever. Think of this happening in a normal job. Or in like a different job that's not in the face of the media. Like, you would lose your job and never be welcome back. So it's just like, I don't know. They're probably going to get off scot-free, to be honest, and just move on. But it's going to be weird if that happens. I think there will be punishments for the Reyna parents, and there definitely should be.
Do me a favor. Think about this. The meme of 2026 of Salt Bay cooking steaks for the Reyna family as they are all barred from watching the World Cup of U.S. soccer. Just
maybe Claudio wants to be the head coach. Maybe that's what he's trying to get at. I don't know.
Cole?
I don't think it's going to affect Gio. Honestly, unless he was like, Mom, Dad, please, I need something, like involved, like Brandon just said. But I don't envision him actually having any role. He's just a kid. He's just trying to play sport that he loves. And sometimes parents act out of, our purview, what we can see, and that's just up to them. Like, there's no controlling people sometimes. And so I think Gio will be unaffected. Honestly, I'm sort of on the redemption arc of Greg and Gio, if that gets to happen, just to work together. Gio might in the future become a guy that Greg is going to be heavily relying on in 2026. So no need to fracture that relationship over something that neither of them really had any control over, to be honest. So I think, yeah, peace is probably the best answer, and redemption and grace. and times when it's not deserved. That's a good word, isn't it?
That's
But
a
yeah,
good word.
I think Gio would be just fine.